the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech indicates the human right to be able to speak their mind, sharing their opinions and views without punishment. This is an extremely important facet of human society, and without it, people's views can be manipulated by greater powers, have certain groups silenced, and overall oppress the people. Also, I'd have to think more about writing, and nobody wants that. This freedom, however, has its limits. People can threaten others, which brings the safety of the person, group, or area in question, which might require action from authorities. By definition, if someone were to threaten to attack someone and the receiver was concerned so the person who said the threat were to be removed or arrested, that would be a restriction of the freedom of speech. They said something and were punished for it. This is an example of the exceptions to the freedom of speech. It still confuses people sometimes. Some people might not understand why calling someone a bunch of slurs can get you in trouble. To which I have to ask, despite being punished for this threat, you were still free to say it. The words you thought up in your spacious noggin escaped your mouth into the sound waves and unfortunately invaded nearby ears. The suppression of the ability to say something is censorship, the subject of this video. The topic is typically discussed in instances of large-scale coverage in media or availability of art. The closest thing to censorship in the previous example would be if the police told everyone at the scene where the threat was said that they couldn't discuss what happened or what was said unless they wanted to suffer punishment. Kind of reminds me of something. Recently online, there's been a lot of talk about censorship, with legislation in Europe relating to online safety, as well as payment processors removing video games from digital platforms like Steam and itch. People right now are growing very concerned about the future of the internet landscape. Now, why am I making a video on this? Of course, I am on the internet, and that's how I'm talking to you right now, so it does matter to me, but I also like to share my opinion on the matter because despite how oversaturated the topic is right now, I believe it is an important issue that needs to be addressed. Someone who's interested in art, including the extremes, and a person who likes to share their opinion on the internet, I feel like it makes enough sense. Warning, this does not verify that my opinion is in any way determinate or extremely qualified. Please take what I say with a grain of salt and think for yourself. I mean, you've probably already heard of this, but just in case you've been living under a rock, passed in the UK's Department of Science, Innovation and Technology in October 2023, the Online Safety Act protects children and adults online and puts a range of new duties on social media companies and search services, giving them legal duties to protect their users from illegal content and content harmful to children. The first part of this act to come into effect starting March 17, 2025 was that online platforms now have a legal duty to protect their users from illegal content online. This is relatively simple to understand. It makes organizations behind these online services forced to stop the spread of illegal content. Most of these already don't want mostly illegal content on their platform. But the issue is now platforms have to take into account what is legal specifically in the UK that might not be illegal elsewhere, either limiting content based on region or just not allowing anything that wasn't legal in the UK to be on their platform. The second part of this act, the one that recently started the wave of censorship discussion, came into effect starting July 25, 2025, and was more specific, requiring platforms use highly effective age assurance to prevent children from accessing pornography or content which encourage self-harm, suicide, or eating disorder content, as well as prevent children from accessing other harmful and age-inappropriate content such as bullying, hateful content, and content which encourages dangerous stunts or ingesting dangerous substances, and provides parents and children with clear, accessible ways to report problems online when they do arise. This is pretty evidently a big deal. As you all know, typically platforms don't do much for age verification. Websites like YouTube or Discord only ask for your birth date and year, while the system allows for easy bypassing, which I and many others would know already, as lying about your age on the internet is a generational experience. It also isn't very intrusive. The same cannot be said about this. With this law in action, in order for individuals in the UK to view adult content, they would have to give up their personal information, such as a photo ID online, which is very dangerous because if there's one thing I don't trust to keep my information safe, it's online data banks. I don't need another PSN leak to prove that again. But hey, at least kids will have a harder time listening to music on Spotify with the funny little parental advisory on it because they need to do a face scan or a photo ID. And if they don't, better say goodbye to that rap data. Some people might argue that this is important in an effort to prevent children accessing adult content. There are so many cases online of kids getting manipulated and groomed by people on messaging boards such as Discord. So you could argue at the very least it would prevent younger users from accessing 18+ servers and getting exposed to, oh, never mind, you can buy this is fucking Norman Reedus in Death Stranding. Or even decades-old Gary's Mod models? Are you fucking joking? At the moment, these protections are barely even working as a thin wall and just violate users' privacy and risk leaking important data in the future. I firmly believe that these are unnecessary, as it should already be the parents' responsibility to monitor what their younger kids are seeing on the internet. But even if you were on the side that there needs to be more protections on the website's end, this is still not it. Why should people have to violate their rights and privacy and pose potential risk because some parents can't be bothered to go through the steps to properly raise their kids and limit their access to the internet themselves? Even if things were to all work as planned perfectly with no problems or leaks, which is impossible, it still is just keeping parents less responsible and allowing neglect. This issue aligns with censorship, as it's not really about protecting kids as it's named, but more so about control. You will give up your sensitive personal information to companies, or else we will limit what you can see. And if you are upset about it, then you just don't care about kids' safety on the internet and you're a bad person. Long story short, maybe forcing people to give facial scans or photo IDs to companies might not be a good idea. Well, enough of this. Let's talk about something that's way more important than invasive UK policies, and that's video games. One crisp morning on July 16th, 2025, Steam suddenly enacted a policy change in order to crack down on not safe for work games that depict rape and incest, and delisted over 500 titles. This was very strange, as Steam is never this liberal with delisting games that were already publicly available, so it came as a shock to the public. Now, before giving my opinion on this change, let's go over some background information on what led to this in case you're unfamiliar with the story or need a refresher. This all begins with an organization called Collective Shout, whose goal is claimed to stand against sexploitation, and boast on their website how they were responsible for getting sexually violent games banned. In their article on the timeline of the situation, they explained the adult game No Mercy by Xerac Games sprung their fight to get games containing incestuous and rape content removed from storefronts. Their first move? Sending Steam support over 3,000 emails telling them about how the games that they have already approved by a real Valve employee to even get the page have such content. To no response. Luckily for them, right after this, the game got removed from the Australian storefront, which isn't very surprising considering the regulations on sensitive content, which led to Collective Shout making a petition to remove the game everywhere, which reached over 70,000 signatures, which Steam also ignored. Presumably due to all this publicity, the developers removed the game from Steam themselves. Tired of the lack of response from Steam, Collective Shout decided to go straight to the source: payment processors, sending over 1,000 emails, amounting to about a third of what they spammed to Steam, and an open letter a month later. It finally led to the policy change this is all about. The one that removed all of the games and says they are restricting content relating to incest and rape. This led to backlash from audiences, and in response, MasterCard tried to cover their ass by saying they weren't responsible and had not required restrictions of any activity on game creator sites and platforms, contrary to media reports and allegations. Which ironically is when Valve actually decided to respond, clarifying that a MasterCard rule specifically rejected their pre-existing illegal content regulations, directly disproving MasterCard's statement. Steam isn't the only platform to be affected by this, as the popular independent platform itch also removed all paid NSFW games in response to pressure from payment processors, directly citing the situation with No Mercy. Now that we're up to date, let's discuss the ramifications. Some people seem to not see why this is a bad thing. I mean, incest and rape are some of the worst things human beings are capable of, and exploiting that in such a way is bad, so not much of a loss to remove these games, right? The issue is a slippery slope. Collective Shout claims that their goal is to stop games that maliciously exploit these topics. However, drawing the line on what should be called malicious, morally good or bad, and what should and should not be allowed on a case-by-case basis is very subjective. Each person has different views of what should and should not be made, be available, exist, whatever. I personally hate the anime Redo of Healer for being the epitome of edgy victim mentality, revenge fantasy, wish fulfillment, that relishes in showing shocking imagery for very little purpose other than to offend people or having pleased the weird fans. This is far from the worst thing out there, but the point of this example is that I would not be sad if I were to never be able to watch this again. On the other note, one of my favorite video games is Katana Zero, released in April 2019. It's a super violent, high-octane 2D platformer focused on combat with a mechanic of slowing down time and trying over and over again with an extremely good narrative. You should try it. It even was nominated for Best Indie Game at the 2019 Game Awards. It lost the Disco Elysium, which is fair enough. Wait, what, Reggie? Anyways, this game is heavily inspired by an all-time classic, very popular indie game called Hotline Miami, released in October 2012, which had a slightly more controversial but still loved sequel in March 2015. These games are very influential, being cited as inspirations for very popular creatives such as Suda51, specifically when creating Travis Strikes Again No More Heroes. Okay, these games are great and all, but what does that have to do with this situation with Collective Shout or censorship? All of these games have been banned in Australia for a time, with Hotline Miami 2 to this day still being illegal to play there. To elaborate, to try to avoid spoilers for the game as much as possible, Hotline Miami 2's intro begins with a staged film set where the player, dressed as a pigman, beats up a few guys before reaching a woman, where after punching her is prompted to finish her, where instead of doing the typical skull smash, he takes off his pants to assault her, before it fades quickly to black to the director calling cut. Even though it alludes to sexual assault in the filming of a pornographic film, the scene isn't very graphic sexually, not showing much, and is very obviously not attempting to be pleasing or enjoyable to anyone, even if they were mentally ill enough. Despite this, players in Australia are unable to experience this game, most likely due to this scene. And greater powers decide what can and cannot be experienced by users, even if they're fully aged adults. That becomes censorship. It controls what pieces of media the public is allowed to consume. This isn't just the case in Australia, which has been this way for years. This is relevant to the very present-day case. Due to the policy changes at Steam that began this discussion, the game Vital Exhumed was removed after release due to the themes of sexual assault and violence against women. The game has no depictions of such things, no nudity, nothing pornographic. Merely because of the game including these themes, payment processors have declared that it should not be allowed to be purchased, so you cannot play it on Steam. Luckily, the developers and publisher Dragon XP have put the game up for free under a CC NB NC license on their website through the link violosband.com, meaning anyone can share DRM-free copies of the game as long as credit to the creators is given, it is used non-commercially, and no derivatives or adaptations are made. Unfortunately, the thing with scenarios like this is that they almost never just stop here. Since payment processors now know that they have the power to remove any game they wish by just threatening to remove their cards from the platform's payment options, they can basically choose what they can and cannot play. While it may have the intention of stopping harmful content from spreading, by allowing a group to decide what is morally good to play just leads to more harm than good. We've already seen Vital Exhumed become a victim to this, and we've seen some countries like Australia are willing to not allow very popular and beloved games. But even the group who started all this mess don't have perfect intentions either. In 2018, Collective Shout was under scrutiny for making a petition to stop the sale of Detroit Become Human for sale in Australia due to a scene of child abuse. The game is about a futuristic America of Detroit, Michigan, and how the technology of sentient androids has changed society. During a scene early in the game, a child is abused by their father, and the player who's controlling the android character Kara can defend the child, and the abuse is depicted as horrible and wrong, and is supposed to further the story of the two characters. That doesn't matter to Collective Shout, however. They also went after Grand Theft Auto 5 in 2014 because it allowed the player to violently attack women, just like any other NPC in a GTA game. Even if your puritanical agrees with Collective Shout that profane material such as these should be wiped from storefronts. They also defended the Netflix film Cuties, the film that literally provocatively presents real child actors. So nobody wins, no matter who you are or where you stand, by having any one group decide what everyone should be allowed to consume ends up becoming censorship, and the enactment of policies like this one that were put into Steam, while some might perceive it as good, can and already have led to harm to video games as an art form. The situation recently regarding government and or company restrictions bring into question what roles they should have in people's own responsibility. The responsibility in how they prevent their kids, on their privacy, and what content they or their children consume. The people who are upset about things like this are often portrayed as weirdos, creeps, or bad people. The Online Safety Act is supposed to protect kids, and you're mad about it because you can't watch porn as easily? Collective Shout and payment processors are removing games, but they're disgusting bio games involving incest and rape. What, do you want those back, you sick fuck? These are the methods of which are distract from the increasing authoritarian legislation. And trust me, I'm in America, so I'm very familiar with that right now. Collective Shout specifically goes out of their way to talk about horrible stuff that gets sent to their supporters, but they seem to present it more in a way that make detractors look bad rather than actual concern. But to be honest, it doesn't really help that going to the bottom of one of their articles shows mostly people making misogynistic comments, but these are the typical gamer 4chan stereotypes that you can't really avoid with situations like this. Regarding online safety, I believe that this regulation increases risk of privacy violations and leaks for very little to no benefit. It can easily be bypassed, and it just makes people more liable to harm. Regarding Collective Shout, I'm not defending every single game that uses sensitive content such as incest or rape, and I believe everyone is entitled to their own opinions. The thing is, in an artistic perspective, by limiting or restricting what topics games can depict or discuss, even if it is to remove what some could argue are deplorable or depraved, and no matter how much people rightfully or not hate those games, removing them from storefronts is undoubtedly censorship, which, as we can see, can and will get out of hand and hurts art overall for everyone. Literally, as I was editing this video, an article released talking about an expansive report from Trans News Network where games that didn't include much adult content but were Yuri or lesbian were disproportionately affected, already showing how, due to these policies, certain groups have been affected. The lesson from these two cases is to be more critical of what groups want to restrict from you and or others, whether it be by the government, activists, or even payment processors. Or they might eventually take advantage. The only thing people can do is discuss and speak out for the change they want. This video might not be perfect or insanely groundbreaking, but I was passionate. As someone who grew up on the internet at a youngish age and personally loves art, including at its most controversial and disturbing, these issues matter a lot to me. Wow, I love soapboxing! Anyway, the next video will hopefully be less topical and political. Will it be anime related? Will it be long? I don't know. See you next time.